Hajimemashite, minasan.
We hope that you're having a really nice day.
And we'd like to welcome you to Anime Trends.
And as always, we'll talk about all the trending topics from our favorite anime shows.
Today, we are going to do a movie recap for one of our favorite sports anime, Haikyuu. And that movie specifically would be Haikyuu Owari no Hajimari. If you clicked on the video, that means you're prepared for some spoilers.
And without further delays, let us start.
Our movie starts with the main protagonist, Shoyo Hinata, who happens to pass by a live broadcast of a national volleyball match. And in that match, Hinata first witnesses an ace volleyball player nicknamed Little Giant, who is part of the Karasuno High School's volleyball team. And due to the Little Giant's small stature, yet powerful offense, Hinata is inspired. At that moment, Hinata had finally set his dream into becoming an ace volleyball player. Years later, after sheer hard work and dedication, Hinata has been accepted to Karasuno High, the same school where the Little Giant was. Full of excitement, Hinata enters the school and immediately joins the volleyball club. However, as Hinata enters the volleyball court, he encounters Tobio Kageyama, another one of our protagonists, who he angrily points at. Vice versa, Kageyama is surprised to see Hinata as well. Then, the scene switches out to a flashback where we see Hinata and Kageyama duking it out on a volleyball match. But Hinata's team seems to be struggling against Kageyama. Hinata then full bursts into an amazing jump and spikes with speed, making him score against Kageyama's team. Then, Kageyama, despite not knowing Hinata's name, shows acknowledgement of Hinata's ability because of that memory. Then, Kageyama makes a comment against Hinata's lousiness. Hinata gets offended and then asks why he's on Karasuno High. Despite being a good player, Kageyama says that the strongest school in the volleyball rejected him. Hinata is then confused. Why? Because of Kageyama's nickname, King of the Court, thinking that his nickname was given to him because he's a strong player. This in turn aggravates Kageyama and tells him not to call him that. After that, 3 seniors came in to greet Hinata and Kageyama. Specifically, the seniors are Ryunosuke Tanaka, the wing spiker, Koshi Sugawara, the vice captain, and Daichi Sawamura, the captain. They immediately recognize the two as extremely good players and are surprised that they are at Karasuno, making remarks that they saw their amazing skills during Hinata's and Kageyama's match prior to that year. Hinata then tells them that they may be small in size, but he still wants to be the ace of Karasuno's volleyball team. Kageyama snaps back with a comment that angers Hinata, which in turn makes Hinata challenge him to a battle. The vice principal comes in to check out what's happening, and the seniors warn them about the consequences of their rivalry. Still, Hinata and Kageyama didn't listen, and proceeds to challenge each other into a battle of Kageyama serving the ball and Hinata receiving the ball. At first, Hinata is surprised by Kageyama's jump serve and dodges the ball. But at the second, everyone's surprised with Hinata's reflex and speed to receive the ball. However, things got a little bit hairy. Consequently, the captain, Daichi, sees this as a problem and kicks the two out of the club until they sort their rivalry out. So, Hinata and Kageyama start to think on how to get back, and as they argue, Hiyoko Shimizu, the manager of the team, passes through them. After that, Kageyama and Hinata had agreed to challenge the seniors, telling them that they can prove themselves as teammates. Daichi agrees to the idea, but instead of them, Hinata and Kageyama will face off against the other new first-year members with the help of Tanaka, while Daichi would assist the other team. However, if Hinata and Kageyama lose, Kageyama would never be allowed to play as a setter in Karasuno. The two accept the challenge. Later, Tanaka and Sugiwara ask why they're being strict to Hinata and Kageyama. Daichi reveals that Hinata and Kageyama are the key to Karasuno's new strength due to their synergy to each other. The scene then switches to Hinata and Kageyama preparing for the match. However, as Hinata and Kageyama diligently trains, one stranger grabs their ball. This stranger turns out to be Kei Tsukishima, and beside him is Tadashi Yamaguchi, the other two first years that Hinata and Kageyama would be facing against. Tsukishima recognizes Kageyama and starts provoking him by prying into his mind, digging up Kageyama's past as the egocentric setter of his previous team. This caused Kageyama to grab Tsukishima by the neck collar, but immediately lets go and walks away. Hinata snaps back and grabs the ball away from Tsukishima, surprising Tsukishima with his jump. Tsukishima then says good luck to them and bids the two farewell. Hinata then encourages Kageyama to keep training. The next day, Hinata, Kageyama, and Tanaka will start to face against Tsukishima, Yamaguchi, and Daichi. But as the game starts, even though Hinata surprises everyone with his jumping strength, Hinata is immediately blocked by Tsukishima, who stands taller than him. As the game goes on, Tsukishima provokes Kageyama by referring to his toss as the king's toss, which causes Hinata to snap back confused. Tsukishima then reveals that Kageyama's nickname as king of the court refers to him as being good, but also refers to his selfish tendencies during the game. Kageyama gets a painful flashback where he pushes his teammates to their limits, creating a rift in their team and losing a match because of it. Kageyama is much more distressed when Tsukishima blurts out his real nickname, the egocentric king. Hinata steps in and tells Kageyama that everything's fine as long as he passes the ball to him. This pisses Kageyama off, but as the game continues, Kageyama learns to trust Hinata with the ball. Though Hinata misses, he reassures that next time would be different and that he'll keep catching Kageyama's toss over and over again. Eventually, as Kageyama becomes aware of Hinata, Hinata manages to catch the ball, and they scored. Everyone went on to make a surprise Pikachu look. As the match goes on, Hinata, Kageyama, and Tanaka was winning, showing that they were capable of being a team. They went on to win the game and got accepted to the club once again. The next day, Kageyama is seen to be practicing his jump serve. Then Hinata appears out of nowhere and receives it as Kageyama tells Hinata off and is about to jump serve again. Yu Nishinoya, the star libero, perfectly receives the ball, putting Kageyama at awe. He now greets Hinata and Kageyama as the new members of the Karasuno High volleyball team and then converses with them for a while. He then showcases his amazing skills as a libero and his outstanding Rolling Thunder. After that short scene, Itetsu Takeda, the faculty advisor of the volleyball team, comes in and announces the Golden Week training camp, a week where the teams are free to train all they want. Also, he announces that they are going to have a practice match against the Nekoma High volleyball team, who seems to be a longtime rival of Karasuno High. This match was to be called Cat vs. Crow, Battle at the Garbage Dump. Takeda then further explains that he wanted to set up the match with Nekoma High to reawaken their longtime rivalry, in the hopes that their previous coach would return. Then the scene cuts out to Asahi Azumane, the ace wing spiker of Karasuno High, who is passing through the volleyball court's entrance. Asahi proceeds to watch Hinata and Kageyama practice. While contemplating about something, Daichi then spots Asahi watching the practice and invites him to the Golden Week training. Asahi hesitates and we get a flashback to his past. In the flashback, Nishinoya, Sugawara, and Asahi are seen to be losing hope in the match. However, it cuts when Daichi snaps him back to reality and says that if he loves volleyball, he will play again. Later, during their practice, Takeda steps in with someone on the court. The person turns out to be their new coach, Keishin Ukai, who is the grandson of the original coach of Karasuno High. Ukai then explains that he'll only coach until Nekoma High's match and proceeds to continue their practice. We then go back to Asahi, who's still deciding whether or not to come back to the volleyball team. Meanwhile, a team of neighborhood players came to partake in practice, and Coach Ukai tells Nishinoya to join the neighboring team, but he seems to be bothered by it. After that, Asahi comes back to practice, and after Hinata shouts his name, Coach Ukai scolds him to go back and play due to the lack of players. As Asahi steps in, we get another flashback of the past, where we see him and Nishinoya arguing about their faults and the reason they lost. Nishinoya tells Asahi that he had no reason to give up because he was keeping the ball up for him. The fight causes a broom to break under Asahi's foot. The flashback disappears, and as Hinata serves the ball, Asahi gets the ball tossed to him, but once he spiked it, it was blocked by Kageyama, who's blown away by the strike. However, as the ball falls, Nishinoya saves it and inspires Asahi to strike again. This makes Asahi happy and shouts to toss the ball to him, and as he reminds himself that he had forgotten the simplest and most obvious things, he strikes the ball that is strong enough to plow through the defense of Tsukishima, Kageyama, and Tanaka. Everyone's surprised, especially Hinata. And as the game goes on, Hinata gets hit right in the face after Asahi hits it, and Kageyama angrily tells him that he'll never be like Asahi. Instead, he should be what he is, and that as long as he's the setter, Hinata would be invincible. This invigorates Hinata's resolve, and instead of trying to get past blockers, he uses his speed and power to be faster. And this surprises everyone, so much so that Hinata was acknowledged by Asahi himself. After the match, Coach Ukai decides to train them in receiving during the Golden Week and wishes them goodbye. As the team wraps it up, Asahi goes to the storage room. He then sees his friend fixing the broom he and Nishinoya broke, and as he helped in tightening the screw, their friendship is restored once again. The next day, Hinata finally sets off to go to the training camp, along with the other club members. After a short while of training, the characters finally went on to arrive at the training camp. Next, they started to admire the place. and finally started eating dinner. However, before the players went to sleep, Tanaka spots Hinata in a corridor and starts asking him what's wrong. Hinata then implies that there's a stranger among them, more specifically, a child, though this turns out just to be Nishinoya, whose hair was just newly washed. The next day, Hinata, Kageyama, and the other club members start jogging in the morning. But as Hinata and Kageyama race against each other, Hinata gets lost, confused. He looks around to see a blonde-haired boy. He then approaches the boy, who later reveals that he's lost as well, and that his name is Kenma Kozume, a second-year volleyball player. Kenma appears shy at first, but Hinata and Kenma soon start conversing about volleyball. He reveals that he's a setter, and that his team needs him. Hinata reveals that their setter is more intense. However, before Hinata asks what school he's from, Kenma is called by his friends, Tetsuro Kuro. The scene moves on to the training court, where Shimizu arrives with their new uniforms. This causes the entire club, especially Hinata, to become excited. Hinata then comments about Nishinoya's uniform, which is different. Kageyama explains that it's because Nishinoya is a libero. Hinata then notices the difference in his and Kageyama's uniform. Then, Daichi steps in and explains that Hinata specifically got the number 10 because it's the same number that the little giant had. Coach Ukai then steps in to say that the little giant played on Karasuno's best volleyball team. However, their opponent, the Nekoma High, has defeated Karasuno High numerous times, and he adds in that he wants to turn the tables this time. The team continues to train, and Coach Ukai explains to Takeda that the reason why Nekoma is strong is not because they have strong players, but it's because they have no flaws, and that they are as flexible as a cat. As the night arrives, Hinata cherishes his uniform silently. Kageyama then approaches Hinata and tells him to suck it up. Hinata gets pissed because he's only allowed to play because of Kageyama and that he'll never be able to stand up on his own. The night then ends with Kageyama and Hinata racing to the bath. The next day, Karasuno and Nekoma finally meet each other for the practice match, and with a total of 12 players each, we get to see Karasuno's opponents, the Nekoma. Later on, he approaches Kenma and asks why he didn't react to Hinata being his opponent. This flusters Hinata. Kenma tells Hinata that on the day they met, Hinata had Karasuno's name on his t-shirt. As Kenma finishes his reply, Taketora Yamamoto, Nekoma's wing spiker, aggressively questions Hinata. Tanaka then steps in to protect Hinata. However, before Tanaka and Yamamoto engage with each other, Sugawara tells Tanaka off, and Yaku Morisuke, Nekoma's libero, does the same with Yamamoto. They say their apologies with each other. Yamamoto then sees Shimizu, which love strikes him. The scene then moves on to Daichi and Kuro, who is both the team's captain. They greeted each other with ill impressions. We then see Coach Ukai conversing with the other team's coach, Naoi, who appears to be old friends. An old man then approaches the coaches, which turns out to be Yasufumi Nekomata, the head coach of Nekoma High. Takeda steps in to introduce himself. Then Coach Nekomata implies that he accepted the challenge because of Ukai, despite him only being the grandson. As the game starts, Daichi gives a pep talk to everyone, telling them to be wary of Nekoma's team. It then switches out to Kuro's pep talk to the Nekoma team, which was rather eccentric but effective, in which Kuro implies as to Kenma's question as the team takes positions. So, Inuoka, Nekoma's middle blocker, is surprised with Hinata's height, and before the match starts, Kenma says that his team is strong because they're all together. Once the game starts, Hinata and Kageyama immediately surprises Nekoma with their quick spike. Kenma notices this, and somehow, he's not as surprised as the others were. The game keeps on spicing on, with back and forth spikes from both teams. In the start of the game, Karasuno seems to be getting the upper hand, but Kenma seems to be up to something. Coach Nekomata then requests a timeout, in which they start strategizing what to do, and Kenma turns out to be the strategist of the team. He immediately deducts that Hinata is the only one they need to stop, and that as long as they stop Hinata, they'll get the upper hand, referring to Hinata as the weapon of Kageyama. Then after the timeout, So Inuoka starts following Hinata through. Kenma, on the other hand, starts deviating the team's attacks that pierces right through Karasuno's defense. Kageyama then notices that the other team is easily detecting their tiniest mistakes. He then shows that they can still go on through, pissing everyone off. In the same way as Kenma, Tsukishima starts analyzing Nekoma, throwing Kenma off. Despite Tsukishima's intelligence, Kenma still downright wins against him. Kageyama then catches up to the problem, realizing that Kenma is the strategist of the team. Later, Coach Nekomata reveals that Kenma is indeed their weapon. Accordingly, Karasuno grows uneasy because of this, making them repeat more mistakes. And as the match goes down to the final points of the set, Hinata and Kageyama agrees to do their usual quick attack to catch up. Immediately, Su Inuoka catches up to Kageyama and Hinata's quick attack. surprising everyone at Karasuno, which in turn makes them lose the set by 3 points less. After the first match, everyone inspires Hinata, telling him that it's alright, which helps Hinata recover from the loss. Finally, as the match starts, Coach Ukai notices that Nekoma's advantage isn't because of luck, but it's because Nekoma is getting used to Karasuno's movements. Hinata's exhaustion has become visible, so Kishima is then confused why Coach Ukai isn't switching Hinata out. Coach Ukai explains that it's because it's a practice match and that they might find a solution for their flaws, though he grows wary of Hinata's mental fortitude. However, to everyone's surprise, Hinata remains courageous and challenged. Kageyama approaches him to reassure him of things, but Hinata assures him that what he's feeling is right, showing flashbacks when he was still afraid of blockers. But at that moment, Hinata explains that he's no longer afraid because of his team. As the game goes on, a small frame of hope opens up to Karasuno when Hinata changes his timing. Coach Ukai catches up to this and orders Kageyama to change his strategy to let Hinata decide his next target instead of Kageyama arranging it for him. Coach Ukai then says that Hinata reminds him of the little giant who at first was getting easily blocked, but later on becomes the ace of Karasuno. Finally, Hinata hits the ball past Inuoka, who has been blocking all his spikes. This immediately shocks everyone, especially Kenma. The game immediately switches back and forth from Karasuno to Nekoma, showing each's team's capabilities. Yamamoto then shows that he's in the game too by striking through Karasuno's defenses. After that, everyone starts getting inspired and starts battling harder than before. On the bench, Coach Ukai and Takeda start contemplating about Hinata and Kageyama's out-of-sync play. Coach Ukai responds that they're out of sync because they're not used to it yet. Coach Nekomata sees the same, and instead of comparing them as weapon and demon, he starts comparing Hinata and Kageyama as two demons. Hinata, however, is still unable to receive balls, making Nishinoya cover for him. On the other hand, Tanaka performs greatly, while in sync with Nishinoya on cheering on themselves. Then, Hinata notices a feint from Nekoma and immediately blocks Inuoka instead of the decoy. After seeing that, Coach Nekomata implies that Karasuno and Nekoma are indeed rivals. Kuro, the team's captain, switches with Inuoka, causing an entirely different challenge for Karasuno. So, Kageyama pulls Hinata in to tell him to switch back to their original quick attack. However, Nekoma also switched strategies that started confusing Karasuno. At that point in the match, the scores were 16-19. Coach Ukai starts explaining that they are no match to Nekoma when it comes to strategy yet. So, all they got going for them is their pure raw strength. He then starts inspiring the team by shouting to overwhelm them with their own strength. After a few exchanges, Coach Naoi requests a timeout and Coach Nekomata pep talks them to maintain their connections to each other. However, Nekoma is winning against Karasuno, causing Coach Nekomata to smirk at Coach Ukai, who is worried about the match. On the contrary, everyone's still pumped up, causing Coach Ukai to switch their positions to overpower Nekoma. At that exact moment, Karasuno immediately starts exchanging hits from Nekoma, from Asahi's strong spikes to Kageyama and Hinata's quick attack. However, in the last moment, right after Hinata strikes the ball, Kenma manages to save the ball and launch it to the other side. Then, before the ball hits Karasuno's side, Coach Nekomata quotes that in volleyball, it's not the team that spikes the strongest wins, but the team who can make the other team drop the ball next would. Then, with that, Karasuno loses the first practice match, and Nekoma celebrates their first victory. Coach Ukai explains that they didn't lose because they were weak, but it's because Nekoma's team is a real team, not individuals with their own strengths and capabilities. Hinata then snaps a rematch, and Coach Nekomata agrees with it. Though Karasuno still lost their next matches, everyone was content. At the end, everyone was exhausted. Hinata tries to request another one, but gets immediately taken down by Coach Nekomata and Coach Ukai. After that, Coach Nekomata and Coach Ukai give their salutes to their opposing teams and gave them their thoughts, saying they'd wish to see each other again in the nationals. Nekoma and Karasuno immediately befriends each other while complimenting each other's strengths. Finally, the coaches and Takeda bids their congratulations and goodbyes to each other, barely. Lastly, before they all went home, Hinata approaches Kenma and reassures him that the next time they meet, he'll make him remember it. Now, thank you for reaching the end of the video. We hope that you liked our movie recap for Haikyuu Owari no Hajimari that we shared with you today. If you want more videos like this, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to help us keep making more.
Now for our goodbye. Arigatou gozaimasu!
And sayonara minasan! We wish you an awesome day.